Well, good evening. My name is B.J. Wilkin, and I'm honored to be here tonight to recognize our Legacy of Excellence recipient. Some of you know me as the CEO of the Bloomington Normal YMCA, who, by the way, was recognized as the recipient of the 2023 Nonprofit Excellent Award. I'm also the treasurer of the McLean County Chamber of Commerce, serving on the board and executive committees, and a resolute public servant to the growth and success of our community. I would like to take a moment to reflect on the opening video. While funny in nature with our Forrest Gump storytelling, we saw the start of the relationship between the Chamber and the YMCA since its inception. It is incredible to think that the Bloomington Businessmen's Association took on that feat of raising funds to build a new YMCA over 100 years ago. That took leadership, collaboration, risk, and respect to collaboratively build an organization that serves the spirit, mind, and body for all. I am here to say that in 2025, the partnership between the YMCA and the Chamber is as strong and steadfast today as the inception back in 1907. When I was asked to introduce our Legacy of Excellence recipient tonight, I was immediately humbled and filled with gratitude for an opportunity to express my personal and professional thank you to someone that is recognized in their national leadership. But before I continue, let me pause here to allow me to officially recognize our 2024 Legacy of Excellence, Mr. Ed Rust. Most of us know Ed Rust as the former president and CEO of State Farm. Born and raised here, he is a graduate of Bloomington High School. He's a graduate of Illinois Wesleyan University and holds his Juris Doctorate and his master's degree in business from Southern Methodist University in Dallas. You might also know that Ed Rust's father, Ed Sr., and his grandfather, Adlai Rust, served in State Farm leadership. So yes, that's 3 generations of Russ in State Farm leadership committed to growing business here in our Bloomington Normal community. Ed joined State Farm in 1975, staying in Dallas after law school, and became a State Farm management trainee at the local office. After gaining an overview of how regional operations were managed, he returned home to Bloomington, where he served as an attorney at State Farm in the corporate law department. He next became involved in marketing and sales before moving into general management. In 1981, he made vice president, and in 1983 was appointed to executive vice president and chief operating officer, and then named a director. He became president and CEO in 1985 and elected chairman of the board in 1987. I'm going to go off script here and talk a little bit about, I had a conversation with Ed, and I asked him, because I was really interested in knowing the position of State Farm back in 1985. And I said, Ed, what position in the market did State Farm hold in 1985? And he humbly said, number 1. And I said, today, what is State Farm's position in the market? And again, he humbly said, number 1. And I think it's just an incredible testament to an incredible leader. Those of you who are in business, it is not easy to be number 1 and stay number 1 for as long as he did, and State Farm. Ed led the company during a period of unprecedented growth, all while serving a number of boards and advancing educational initiatives, which you might not know is where his passion really lies. Rust became devoted to the advancement of education in America and instrumental in State Farm's contributions in this area in terms of both money and time of its employees. While Ed served as a trustee of Illinois Wesleyan University, he also was a member of the Business Advisory Council of the University of Illinois College of Commerce and Business Administration, as well as the member of the Advisory Council of the Stanford University Graduate School of Business. In addition, he was co-chairman of the Business Coalition for Excellence in Education and was a member of George W. Bush's transition team on education. What you might not know is that in 2012, he was named as the chairman of the United States Chamber of Commerce, where he worked feverishly to further advance his interests and initiatives in education and workforce development with outcomes both at home and across the nation. Ed's resiliency and leadership for the advancement and growth of State Farm, along with his selfless and passionate work to advance access to quality of education, is worth this recognition alone. But his humble nature, combined with decades of behind-the-scenes efforts toward the commitment of a better Bloomington Normal, is what we truly honor here tonight. Because of Ed's leadership, State Farm grew. People near and far moved to the community for the opportunity to work at State Farm. As the population grew, so did the number of businesses, available services, community activities, healthcare accessibility, and of course, access to outstanding education. Oh, and let's not forget about our new YMCA in the community. Upon meeting with Ed in preparation of this evening's event and reviewing his resume of accomplishments and his impact of our community, his response was, "It's not the impact that I or anyone has had on the community, it's the impact the community has had on us." Ed, you are a living proof that a homegrown small-town guy coming from a supportive family, including your lovely wife, Sally, who is here tonight, son Barry, who is a teacher in Brooklyn, New York, and his wife and daughter, with access to exceptional secondary and post-secondary education right here, can not only make it all the way to the top, but in a way that selflessly leaves a legacy for decades and decades to come. And so, Ed, humbly, we say thank you. On behalf of the McLean County Chamber of Commerce, we recognize and say thank you to Ed Rust as we recognize you as our 2024 Legacy of Excellence recipient. At this time, I will back up and let's hear what others had to say on the video.
Well, actually, Ed and I went to high school together. He was a little bit older than I was, but I knew him from high school. That started our friendship.
Well, I've gotten to know Ed as a community leader here in town, but most of us know Ed as the exceptional leader of State Farm for nearly 3 decades, the longest serving leader in the company's history.
I was part of Ed's personal staff for a number of years, worked with him in communications, research, and different projects. And so we worked very close together during that time period.
Many of us know his true passion for tinkering and all types of mechanics.
I'm not sure if he made this robot, but he had a robot named Romeo. He had a workshop out there, and I think there was a group of us that went out there for some evening, and this robot comes around the corner, walking and talking, scared us all to death. But it was quite something that he, clear back then, was into all the things that he's into now with all of his mechanics and rebuilding trucks and all the things that he does now.
About a year ago, when I really got to know Ed quite a bit, was one of my fondest memories of Ed. We were sitting having lunch. We had lunch for almost 2 hours, and we talked about cars and vehicles and everything mechanical. That afternoon reminded me of my days as a mechanic.
You know, Ed has a great sense of humor. I like to tell the story that I moved to Bloomington in 2004, which was a time period that in the business world that facial hair was not something that was considered appropriate in the workplace. And I didn't have a beard for a number of years. I shaved it off before I came to Bloomington. And after being here for a while and working with Ed, I grew it back, and Ed would gently chide me. One day, for whatever reason, it may have been a community theater production that I was in, I shaved the beard off. And he walked into a meeting that morning, saw me for the first time in a long time without a beard, and he just looked at me and said, "You know, you really do have a face for beards."
What many of us may not know is that Ed has been a leading voice and advocate for education at all levels. Under his stewardships, State Farm emerged as one of the largest private contributors to education, demonstrating its steadfast commitment to supporting educational initiatives since the mid-90s.
Ed was so incredibly involved as a CEO in public education reform, focused on outcomes for children, that just bleeds down to the local level. I mean, he worked at the national level, but he was very focused on how we took what he was working on in DC with all the national groups and brought it home to Bloomington Normal. All the Promise Councils that are here in Bloomington Normal now are a result of Ed's work with America's Promise Alliance. So many of the things that we were able to do at State Farm that involved young people. We had a youth advisory board that allowed young people to be involved in State Farm, but also to be philanthropic to young people around the country. That's all due to Ed's advocacy.
He was the CEO and chairman of a Fortune 50 company, and he talked to presidents and international leaders around the globe, but he never carried that persona of being the boss or referred to himself as the boss. Never once, not even as a joke. When Ed talked about the business, it was always about people. And he would talk about the impacts on, first and foremost, the customers. But he also thought about the impacts on the communities where we all lived and worked. And that, for a large part of us here, was the towns of Bloomington Normal and McLean County.
Ed, you had a legendary career. Your 30 years leading one of the nation's largest companies is a feat that very few have matched. Whenever I travel across the country, as I meet new business colleagues, it is almost universal that they ask about Ed Rust. It's made me reflect on the breadth of your impact, and I think that impact is because of who you are as a person. The stories of you in your unassuming way welcoming people to Bloomington. And even one story about you showing up to help someone lay sod. I don't know if it's true, but it's certainly believable. I really appreciated a few weeks ago when you reached out to share your concern and support for the State Farm team as wildfires raged in Southern California. As a young leader at State Farm, I had the privilege to work with Ed and his team. And what impacted me the most is that the key question was always this: what is the right thing to do? Ed, thank you for your leadership and your friendship. You've built an incredible legacy, impacting millions of people across the country and thousands here in McLean County. Congratulations on receiving the Legacy of Excellence Award. I can't think of a more deserving recipient.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Suzanne Clark, President and CEO of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. On behalf of all of us at the Chamber, I want to offer my congratulations to Ed Rust Jr. as he receives the McLean County Chamber's Legacy of Excellence Award. Ed cemented himself as a titan in the insurance industry during his remarkable 30 years as CEO and chairman of State Farm during a period of rapid growth for the company. Not only is Ed a leader in his own industry, he is a well-respected leader in the business community at large as well. Throughout his career, he graciously volunteered his time serving on multiple boards, including our board of directors here at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. We were lucky to have Ed serve as a board member for more than 10 years, where he held numerous leadership roles, including board chair. Ed played a large role in shaping the Chamber's legal reform efforts, and his leadership and insight enabled the Chamber to roll out new initiatives, grow our membership, and ultimately expand our impact on behalf of our members. We are proud to count Ed among the distinguished leaders who have helped shape the Chamber's mission and legacy, and I am proud to have called him my friend. Congratulations, Ed.
Please welcome to the stage the recipient of this year's Legacy of Excellence Award, Ed Rust.
Thank you all. Thank you. You're very kind. Please, it's going to be a late evening otherwise. Good evening, and thank you, BJ, for that introduction. You know, I'm thinking as I stand up here and having watched those videos, probably the best thing I can do is just say thank you and go sit down. But Charlie's over here saying, no, that's not the deal. You know, again, BJ, appreciate those kind words, and for my colleagues also that were on the video. As BJ noted, when he and I visited with Charlie about the recognition and tonight's program, I did ask if the recognition was for the impact an individual had on McLean County or the impact McLean County had on the individual. You see, I'm a product of McLean County. My family settled here back in 1834. They were farmers raising cattle. There are no shortcuts or easy days in farming, but the experience built a strength of character, determination, and a sense of community. I'm the 6th generation of that family. I grew up around livestock. As a hobby, my parents raised quarter horses. Now, a hobby, if you consider we were running 145 head of horses just south of town. We would put up 3,000 to 4,000 bales of hay a year. And I got to feed that hay in one end of the horse and clean it up on the other. For some reason, I don't know, my dad kind of thought that would build character. I can attest to you, well, I don't know if it's character, it does give you an appreciation for work. Making that comment, I reflect back the year he served as president of the U.S. Chamber. He was asked by a reporter about raising horses and what impact that had on him. And his response was classic of my dad. He said, "You can't have your head in the clouds and your feet in the manure." Interesting, some of that good old Midwest McLean County humor I could take. I recall one fall morning, walking to catch the school bus, that our neighbor had not yet gotten the crops out of his field. He had suffered a heart attack that summer and was told to avoid work. Getting on the bus, I saw neighbors with their trucks, tractors, and combines pulling into his farmstead. That afternoon, returning home, all the crops had been harvested. When asked about State Farm's jingle, "Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there," I share that story, helping hands in a time of need. It was in that being a good neighbor context that I spent time working to enhance the performance of our students and the impact on student achievement. I was often asked, why is a business leader so interested in education and student performance? My simple answer, our future depends on it. I want to be able to hire your son, daughter, or grandchildren. I want them to be successful and have productive careers, to be informed consumers and contributing citizens. Today, when you clear out all of the rhetoric and finger-pointing in the debate around education reform, one constant remains. Students exposed to a rigorous standard-based curriculum are best prepared to meet the pressures and challenges of being a productive adult. A quality education is truly the foundation and driver of equal opportunities. You know, how many of you here tonight look back and I wish I'd spent a little more attention in that particular class in high school or college or what? Or you elected not to take an elective and you look back, darn, I wish I had. You know, education is not just a province for our kids. It's also with each one of us. Studies used to show that the current skills possessed by adults will become obsolete in 5 years. That time has drastically shortened. I was reading some of the coverage on the recent World Economic Forum in Switzerland, and they've come up with a new acronym, FOBO, F-O-B-O. You may be aware of it. It stands for Fear of Becoming Obsolete. You think about that. How many of you are comfortable with understanding and the implications of AI? How many know what AI really is? You think about it, it wasn't even on the radar screen much just a year ago. Or bring it down more fundamentally day to day, do we all really understand how to use the technology in our cars? I don't know about you, every once in a while something will, where did that come from? How do I get that off the screen or what? And I know I probably have a few choice words to express my frustration, which obviously the voice on the system will come back and will say, pardon? I apologize and try to work it out. Lifelong learning is no longer a buzzword. The need is real. And as we look, not just are we ready, but are we helping our kids be ready? You know, as I think back and how things have changed during my lifetime, it is absolutely phenomenal. Some of my colleagues will remember I've told this story many times before about being at a conference out in San Francisco years ago. It was 1996. And the topic of this one-day seminar put on by Fortune magazine was the internet. Are there any business applications? It was put on by Mark Andreessen, who was head of Netscape at the time, which ultimately was bought by Microsoft, the search engine. And then Mark's gone on and formed a venture capital firm, Andreessen Horowitz, premier company there in San Francisco. 2 years later, Bill Gates invited about 100 CEOs up to Redmond for the first CEO summit that Microsoft offered. It was fascinating because all the discussion was around this thing called mobility, mobile phones and so forth. And you had some of the key players in that industry. You could tell there were discussions going on, and I found it was fascinating just sitting back and watching all the action. I bring this up because we had the opportunity that evening, one evening, to go out to the Gates home and had dinner there. And it was fascinating walking through that house. It was like walking through a Hyatt. But what I look back on and think, they talked about having somewhere around 65 miles of coax cable. Now you think of a visionary by Bill Gates, wouldn't he have known that Wi-Fi was going to come about sometime? Another time I went back, you can tell there was no coax, but there were all the connectivity through Wi-Fi. I had a friend one time talk about his son who had asked an older brother, what was it like growing up before broadband? You know, or the old cartoon about dad and son leaving grandparents at Christmas. And the young son looks up at his dad and said, Dad, why do grandmom and granddad have their phone tied to the wall? Again, you think just primitive examples of how the world is changing on us and what we must do not only individually, but for our kids in helping them prepare for tomorrow. Business as a community, as a voice, is a crucial part of understanding today's issues in shaping policy and preparing for tomorrow. The perspectives and voice you bring to the table as members of the McLean County Chamber play a vital role in this process, being a voice in this policy debate and helping heighten the level of understanding and appreciation. Your roles and responsibilities have never been greater. Think about the pioneers in any field, the inventors, the visionaries, the leaders. They did not settle for the status quo. They dared to push boundaries, challenge norms, and redefine what was possible. They understood that to leave a lasting legacy, they had to embrace change, to energize it, not fear it. You recognize this responsibility as a journey that requires perspective, perseverance, and a commitment to growth and the courage to make adjustments and, yes, to change and grow. I know you all are up to it. I deeply appreciate the recognition tonight. Charlie, I thank you and your board, the membership of the McLean County Chamber, for what you do, but equally excited knowing what you can accomplish. Ladies and gentlemen, my sincere thank you for tonight's event and the recognition. May God bless.